Hey Internet, it's RJ. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning into the show today. Now, today's episode, if you recently picked up a new travel credit card, then there's a very good chance that you have a credit card perk that will cover either TSA PreCheck, Global Entry, or even Nexus on some cards. So in today's episode, we're going to focus on TSA PreCheck. Of course, over the coming weeks, we'll be going through each one of these programs so you can figure out how to best use your credit, which one is right for you. So, of course, if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead, press the subscribe button, and let's get to work. Now, as we said, TSA PreCheck, Global Entry, Nexus, we're going to describe what they are, but again, they got more popular over the last few years because they're generally perks of travel credit cards, and not even cards as expensive as you would think. You can see it on some cards as low as $95 from airlines, hotels, or your Sapphire Reserves, your Platinums, your Venture X's, things like that. So much so that, it's very, again, it's very common, so you're probably going to have one, and I would go so far as to say is, out of all the coupons we see, this is one of them that is actually worth the price of admission, and one that you don't have to, fool around and try to tweak the value accordingly. So keep that in mind as we go. But with that, what is TSA PreCheck? Because again, we're going to do separate videos on all these, is not to confuse things and try to cram too much into one. So TSA PreCheck here, what is it? Well, it's a part of what the government calls Trusted Traveler Programs. Now, Trusted Traveler Programs, they're technically offered by the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. Now, of course, you will be interacting with the TSA, Transportation Security Administration, at the airport, but Department of Homeland Security is going to be the one doing all these approvals, and what it does is it gives members access to expedited lanes at U.S. airports when crossing international borders. So again, what does Trusted Traveler Program means? Well, it means that you've gone through a vetting or a screening process that helps you get through the line of security, right? Either TSA PreCheck is going through the line of the airport line much quicker. So you have to go to, when you're going to the airport, before you can get to your terminal, basically behind security, you have to go through a TSA screening. Again, Department of Homeland Security is going to run all these approvals and things like that, but TSA, Transportation Security Administration, is the one actually administering the screening. They've got the blue uniforms on, so you're going to stand in line. Then eventually you get up to the line, and you can once you show them your boarding pass and your ID, then there's the actual screening, right? That's where the benefits really come into play. So I'll put them on screen for you. This is really why you would want TSA PreCheck. So here you have it. Again, when you do not have PreCheck, the opposite applies. You have to take off your shoes, pull out all your devices, take out all your liquids, take off your belt, take off your jacket, that whole thing. So with PreCheck, you get to leave all this stuff on, and what you do is you go through, and there's two ways. It'll either be like a metal detector type deal, or sometimes you still have to go through like the full body scanner. But either way, it's much, much quicker, much simpler to get through the line this way versus taking everything off. Now, of course, I usually have to take off my belt anyways. It really just depends on the metal detector they walk you through, but sometimes it triggers, so it's not a guarantee. But again, taking off just your belt is much easier, especially if you travel with laptops. You have to pull them out, put them both in separate bins. If you've got a laptop or iPad, separate bins, it takes a long time. So with this is a much quicker, much expedited way to get through the line, just like that. So again, that's why it's worth it. If you're even only traveling a few times a year, honestly, I think it's actually worth it. But with that though, where can you use this at? Obviously airports, right? But is this in enough spots to matter? Well, again, it's been a number of years since this program has rolled out, so luckily enough, you can see the map that they have, and you can kind of go through and play with it to find, your routes that you travel. But overall, there are 200 plus airports in the U.S., and of course 85 different airlines are participating with them. Now, of course, that covers all the majors, your Uniteds, your Deltas, your Spirits, Americans, that whole thing. The major airlines are going to be covered. So again, go to the map if you really want to. You can kind of mess around with it and check your specific routes. But again, I've never been in an airport. I guess I'd take that back. The vast majority of airports I've been have had PreCheck. On occasion, like coming back from like North Dakota or something crazy like that, it's a true story. All airports have to have TSA, but they didn't have a PreCheck line per se. But what they did was they gave me this giant laminated card that said PreCheck, and then I got to go through, but it was still a little bit clumsy. So again, if you're traveling to much smaller airports, this was an airport with like 5 gates total, right? So again, that's probably not most people's use cases. I haven't done that since one trip, but again, it's in the majority of major airports. Even mid-tier airports still have it, right? You got to be a really small airport, and even then, that airport's that small, then going through the regular line doesn't really take that long. So anyways, that is the locations. Now let's get into everything else you need to know, like cost and eligibility here. So when it comes to eligibility here, again, U.S. citizens, U.S. nationals, or lawful permanent residents. Now as far as cost goes, the initial enrollment is going to be $85. Renewal is going to cost you $70, but it does last for 5 years. As we mentioned earlier at the top of the show, many travel cards do offer this as a credit. So you'd get the credit, and then every 5 years, 4.5 years, I think they'd let you use it again. So what does the process look like though? So there's a few steps here. So number one is simply to register. You do this online. I will link it down below for you, but you go through it, you apply like normal, fill out the application, and then what you're gonna do after that is schedule an in-person meeting. Now an in-person meeting isn't nearly as bad as it sounds, right? They call it an interview, but realistically what it is a spot where you go. It's usually at the airport. When I did mine, I actually went to the airport, a little TSA office. You don't have to have a ticket or anything. It was basically on the side where like baggage claim was at, so you could get to it, without actually having a boarding pass and having to go through security and all that, which really helps. But really what they're going to do is they're going to ask you a few questions, basically like, are you a terrorist? They're going to take your fingerprints, and then they're going to verify your documents. So you do need to bring some documents with you. Documentation is always big. So here you have it on screen. These are the documents that they're looking for, the ones that you have to choose from anyways. And so this is straight from the TSA website, but what they're looking for is to bring one of the documents in list A to an application center. So unexpired passport, I'm not going to read through them all, but like passport would be the biggest one that most people would have. Driver's license, obviously they still have to be valid. If you don't have one of those, you can drop down to list B, and at least 2 documents are required if you don't have one from list A. So you could do, again, photo ID or document that meets this citizenship requirements. And so, when I did that, again, this was a few years ago, but they say 3 to 5 days for approval. But I remember walking back from the TSA office to the car, so like the giant parking garage at the airport, and I got a few emails that said I was already approved. So it went really quick. Now again, depending on when you're watching this, there was a time where like they were very backed up due to the pandemic. So I wouldn't necessarily expect that speed right this minute, but when I did it, it was very quick. Now, with that, once you are approved, what do you have to do? How does this actually work? Because just being approved doesn't quite get you through the fast pass lane, so to speak. So what they're going to do is they're going to give you a known traveler number, right? That's the number you need to take and enter it in basically anywhere, like any of your airline accounts. So if you go to like your Delta account, for example, there will be an option to enter in a known traveler number. And when you do that, what that's going to do is basically give you, on all your future boarding passes, a TSA PreCheck logo on your boarding pass. So either when you print it out, or if you do it digitally through like the Delta app or something like that, it'll be right there, which is pretty good. And then when you're walking in the airport, normally there's a TSA person at the front of each line, regular and then PreCheck. So you're going to look for the sign that says TSA PreCheck. They're usually pretty well marked, right? You see the TSA PreCheck logo. Again, I'll put it up for you, but that's what you're looking for. You show them that boarding pass. They do a quick check to just with their eyes, just like, yep, you have PreCheck. You can go through that line. The reason they're there is because a lot of people get confused, and then sometimes they go, in the wrong line, so to speak, so they'll point you in the right direction, but that's what you're looking for. It's important to note that this doesn't have anything to do with Clear or anything like that, right? Because Clear is a separate deal. Again, we'll talk about it in a separate video. I think I have a video on Clear. Actually, I can link down below for you, but that's a whole separate deal. You're just looking for the TSA PreCheck line. So really, that's what you need to know. Just put in your number. Now, there are some helpful tips to know here. In the past, when you've been booking, let's say it's me and I'm booking, with a buddy or something like that who doesn't have PreCheck, if everything's under my reservation, PreCheck has historically been associated to that second person, and it'll just appear on their ticket, even if they have not gone through the vetting process. They have some rules about kids as well that I can put on screen for you folks with children. But again, that's a way, normally if you're a parent, you would be booking everyone on your itinerary anyways, and that generally PreCheck is passed down to those folks. So overall, that is TSA PreCheck. It's actually really easy, straightforward, and to the point. I do find their website surprisingly helpful for a government site. But again, this is one of the perks that I do think is worth the price of admission on most of these travel cards, and you can count at full face value. So anyways, guys, let me know if you like this one by dropping me a thumbs up down below. Of course, if you found it particularly interesting, go ahead and consider subscribing to the channel. We're posting content just like this every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Of course, right back here every Sunday with all the news you can use in the week that was in credit and finance. Again, question for you guys is, let me know if you're a fan of TSA PreCheck here. What are some stories? How much time has it saved you sprinting through the airport as you're late from your flight? I know that's generally my best use case for it. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and talk to you very soon in the next one.